So I'm both Canadian and Finnish, and I've lived in Vancouver for over 20 years, but since 2018, I've been living in Helsinki, which is my birth city and birth country, and I've been working at Aalto University, which is the pink dot there. It's about 10 minutes by metro from the center of Helsinki, and it's a gorgeous setting, as you can see, on the coast. And Aalto University is a combination of a school of it's a combination of 3 universities that merged about 12 years ago. And it's the School of Arts, the School of Business, and the School of Engineering. And now it's all called Aalto University. And I'm in the first school, the School of Arts, Design, and Architecture. We have about 12,000 full-time equivalent students and about 4,000 faculty and staff, of which 400 are professors, and our faculty is about 40% international, which is quite good for Finland, which is totally a small Nordic country. So we have been able to attract quite a lot of international faculty. And that's our campus. And that's me. So you'll get these slides if you want them afterwards. My contact information is there. So why did we look at memory decline? This is a project that we ran with for 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And I think we all have similar issues with the aging population and an increased prevalence of dementia and memory decline. And we probably all struggle a little bit as to how to accommodate this growing part of the population. So residential care is the traditional remedy or the traditional solution, but it's not great. It's not great socially, and it's also the most expensive way to deal with this problem. So we wanted to take a look at how we could provide options for this, and how could we create situations where we could avoid residential care altogether. And the last bullet here is one, it's important because some people categorically avoid residential care. They just refuse to go there, going as far as saying that they would rather die than go. And that is, there was actually a case of MAID in Canada, which was very disturbing to me, and it was based on this premise. Okay, so we had a consortium project. We had, which means that it's a self-funding project. We had partners who all came with a certain amount of money to the table, and at the end of which we had €250,000 that funded the project. So everybody put down 25,000. And this is a good way for us to run projects because the reporting burden is very low, and everybody comes to the table very interested and motivated. And we ended up having students from 5 disciplines, which was fortunate because I did not plan it that way, but we ended up having students from these different disciplines, and they all did thesis, so we ended up with 8 master's theses on this topic. And this is how it works. The consortium idea is that there's these different partners. There's municipal partners, we had an NGO, we had businesses, we had a housing funding authority, and we had the Ministry of Environment and my university. And then everybody comes together, they all get a thesis student to work with, and off we go. And we also hired a doctoral student, and I have a staff senior scientist who was also working on the project. Our research questions were, how do we need to develop living environment to support people with memory decline, to manage their activities and support their well-being? So how do we need to develop these solutions? And the second was that in which ways can multi-generational living environments and communal solutions support this? We don't have a lot of multi-generational living solutions in Finland right now, which is the old sort of family village model that all generations live together. And then this co-development, inclusive design question, how can we develop these jointly to find the best success? And the objectives were to find solutions between living at home and the 24/7 care. These are like the opposites, like you live at home independently, and then the 24/7 managed care, complex residential care, you don't even have a key to your own room. So we also wanted to promote reliance and independence, increase social integration, strengthen communities, and advocate for multi-generational and diverse solutions, and promote inclusivity in design. Now, all this was with the aim to promote empathy in society in general. because we feel that the empathy is lacking many times when these situations, especially when they escalate, and we've wanted to really increase the understanding around this, which is a normal phase of life. It's like childhood, babyhood. So old agehood is also a natural part of life. So the living options that exist right now are basically private home, some level of assisted living, sometimes communal living, some multi-generational living, and then the pink, which is the institutional living, which is the one we want to avoid. We want to avoid the excessive reliance on it. So our question was that what happens in between these living modalities? And we really wanted to bring these 5 different modalities together and maybe even mix them up a bit. And our findings were that we need to create solutions that promote community building. And this is a really interesting one because in Canada, which I love, community, the sort of understanding of community is a given. Welcome. Yeah, come inside. And the idea that a community can provide significant support or an interface in this whole question is not really challenged here. But in Finland, I had some professionals who just came up to me and said, but Laura, you cannot expect your neighbors to have any responsibility on somebody's care. And it's like the conversation is not really evolved beyond that level. So I think the understanding of community is important in our conversation acutely in Scandinavia, where people are still fairly individualistically thinking. And the importance of experience and user-involved processes. The experience is easily forgotten here, but we need to really understand who we design for and how these places and living environments are experienced. So the user experience is super important. And then we created several checklists and strategies for designers who deal with these issues. So we came up with intermediary housing strategies, which is a word that would describe the situation between living at home and being institutionalized. And it's a strategy that covers different modalities. And that's one of the major findings as well, is that we really want to object to the thinking that there would be one answer that is always being applied to this situation, because the cases are very diverse and people's circumstances are diverse, people's needs are diverse. So we really wanted to find solutions that would recognize the diversity. So we had 8 theses created, and these are the topic areas where these theses were written, and I have given the list to Andrew, so if you want them, they're all online, so you can download and read them. And I apologize, some of them are in Finnish, but some are not, so you will get something out of there anyways. So this one I'm going to run fairly quickly. This is a new housing thesis. This is actually a really very good thesis, in my opinion. And it was done in the city of Pori in Finland, which has it sort of has old wooden houses. So this is a whole block that the student designed. And the aesthetic here is one that attempts to blend into the traditional aesthetic of the wooden city. But what she did is she designed a whole block of housing that incorporates all different kinds of housing in the same block. So it's the concept of aging in place, the concept of multi-generational living. There will be babies born here, and there will be 100-year-old grannies, because there was also an 8-bed complex residential care unit put into this building, but it's so that it's not separated and put somewhere with, with the cherry trees on the outskirts of the city, which I object to, because that always takes people away from their own communities. So her questions were, how do architectural features support memory friendliness? How can architecture contribute to community building? And what solutions promote independence? This thesis is only in Finnish, but there is a summary that was translated, so I'm happy to pass it on if you're interested. And I'm going quickly here because I know you're advanced people and you can read these images on the screen quite readily. But this shows the concept of the sort of basically a closed block where there's big yard in the center, and this is the ground floor. So there was some communal spaces here, And then as we go up, here's the site plan, which shows, how it is situated in this area of single-family wooden houses. They would be picturesque houses looking wonderful in the North American context. And then this is just one part of her floor plan that shows some individual apartments, and there's apartments that can be combined with a, for example, I think this one here has this room can belong to either apartment. So if somebody wants to have a room for a live-in nanny, or if there's a young student in the family who goes and lives with the granny for a while, that's possible. So we built in as much flexibility as possible into this design, and it has a lot in it that is not possible to describe in the few minutes that I have for this project. But this project basically did look at how in a new build residential block you could put all these elements in, and they can be family apartments, they can be student apartments, they can be independent living. There's a cafeteria where you can have your meals. The meals is always an important thing because people don't eat well when they live alone. It's a fact of life, they don't eat well. And also if you go to the cafeteria and have your meals together with others, you break bread and you make community. So having the cafeteria in this facility is crucial. Anyways, here are some of her features that she incorporated into her new design. This is an interior design thesis. This is excellent, but as I know we're talking about city planning, so interior design may be a bit less relevant. In this project, we took actually an existing design from a housing provider, and we looked at this design, which was a wood frame building, apartment building in Kuopio in Finland, and the student took it apart and basically redrew the plans to make them memory friendly. It was a very rewarding project, and this student had these 9 main focus areas, and these are now for interior design, but let me tell you friends, all these things should also apply on a city level, on an outdoor space level. So you need to have safety and security. That's always an important thing. Overexposed when we talk about memory decline, because we think that these poor people with memory decline might wander somewhere and get lost, so let's put them somewhere where they can't go out, which is a very poor way of thinking. We just need to make environments where it's safe to go out and wander a bit. It's okay. Healthy people also, they get drunk and they go wandering and nobody wants to lock them up. So we need to think that it's sort of a right for people to be able to wander as well. So here are her 9 focus areas that she worked on. This thesis is in English, so you can look it up if you want. And she really did a very good job of also showing how in the residential floor plan you can make details that support independent living. So those would be in the thesis. But there's a lot of things in there. And she also focused on sensory design and how the sensory design helps with orientation, security, and the building of identity. So when we build and design for memory decline, we really don't want repetition, because the repetition is confusing. If you have like 15 different buildings out there and they're all painted the same color, you can be sure that a person with memory decline is going to get lost because they cannot tell them from another. So the sense of identity for buildings and spaces is super important in this regard. Then we had a student who looked at a community center which was connected to a couple of residential towers which had independent living. And this was greatly underutilized. Hi, come in. Yeah. So it was greatly underutilized, and they also had a pool, which is sort of a community asset. This is in a small city in Finland called Porvoo. And she looked at how could they could create it into a memory center, how could the users be involved in design and planning, and how to create this into a community center that would be attractive for the whole neighborhood. And again, this is goes to this, it's sort of a no-brainer that these should be open for everyone, but when we are talking in the context of memory decline, it's not a given, because people still think that these people should be separated from community, and that's incorrect thinking, in my opinion. And this place will be much more vibrant when they open it to the entire community. And they wanted to support the aging in community, and the service center as it was had a very limited menu of activities, because it was only geared towards the residents, and some of them were quite passive, which is a reality when we talk with aging. Some people just are not so active anymore, and they had very short hours, and the building layout wasn't good either. So this student designed first of all, a design principles for how to make this community center memory friendly. And then she did suggested building alterations to this, and one of them was to make this new straight corridor here, which was basically built outside the existing exterior wall, because it was super labyrinthine to get through. So she just basically built a second exterior wall and opened this corridor that also improved the indoor-outdoor connection. Finland is much colder than here sometimes, so the indoor-outdoor thing is valuable if we can get it. So this one, the learning from this one was that the community center or this facility that was designed for only people who lived there, who were people with dementia and memory decline, should be open to the community at large. And I think that is the inclusivity and the normalization principle that we were hoping to support here, and it was well argued in this thesis. And then I asked the students at the end of the time, I said, so what did you learn? I mean, we know what you created, but I said, what did you learn? And she said that I learned how a designer could help solve social issues. And I thought that was a really nice thing to hear, because it sort of goes beyond the just doing the assignment. And then, of course, the user involvement is important. We were really hampered by COVID doing this. So as you can understand, we ran 2 workshops here, but we unfortunately only were able to include the staff because of COVID. But they were fruitful still. Okay, renovations. So we have some cities in Finland where people have moved away from. And they moved to Helsinki, they moved to Tampere, they moved to Oulu, the cities that in Finland are the university cities. And then we have cities like Jyväskylä, which also has a university, but has some sort of population loss due to out-migration. So we have buildings that are not fully occupied. And then there was the thought that maybe we should look at how to renovate these buildings so that they could be independent living apartments for people who might have some limitations or special needs. So here we go. We started to look at this building, and we did this. This student did this evaluation structure for how could we make these buildings work as independent living units. And I think, so she made this checklist about the environment, how the building itself, how the apartment, so it's 3 levels, how the apartment needs to work, how the building needs to work, and how the environment immediately around the building needs to work. And she made this whole sort of checklist or system, and then we applied it to the building, and the outcome was that, sorry, this building is actually not suitable for such a renovation. And basically where it did fail was that it just could not be made accessible. So that was interesting, because we had a client in the consortium who wanted to get this building design. And we said, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. This building is just not suitable for it. Some buildings are, but this one isn't. And they were really great about it and said, well, fine. So then tell us how we can assess our other buildings. And that's how we ended up with this whole assessment criteria, which ended up being this student's thesis, how to evaluate buildings for potential renovation to independent living or accessible suites. Now, this is an interesting one. This student was a student of both landscape architecture and urban planning. So she did a double major, and so that was 2 degrees with us, and she's now in Berlin doing a doctorate. And she wanted to look at outdoor environments. And I so welcome this as an architect, because as architects, we tend to just think about what happens inside the walls, right? So anything outside of the exterior walls, that's you just put some bushes there kind of thing. So I'm like, yes, now let's look at what happens in the outdoor environment. And this is a lovely thesis. It's in English, so you can look it up. And she went to the city of Tampere, which is our third biggest city, where she was from, incidentally, and she did an assessment of how her grandmother's neighborhood was memory friendly or not. And here are her research questions. How can public outdoor spaces support independent living and aging in place? How can green and recreational spaces be improved? And what type of shift in planning and design paradigms is needed? And I'm after these shifts. I was telling Andrew before this lecture that I have given a lot of lectures, and I love speaking, and I love talking to students, and I love sharing what I know. And if anything, I don't know if anything stays with you from anything that I show, but if I have been able to make you think differently, that's huge. And I think the shifts in thinking, the shifts in mindset, they're crucial for progress. They're crucial for new things to come about. So think about this. What kind of shifts in planning do we need to create in order to make sure that our outdoor spaces also support people who are aging? And this is her, she divided it into 4 categories: green spaces, services, walkability, and identity. And the identity category was one that it's the most sort of esoteric, I would say. But that is the one where we have a personal connection to something. You know, Gassy Jack and Gaston or something. You come to Vancouver after 20 years and everything's changed. But there's something there that you can connect to. And these are things that people can have strong connections to their identity with regard to space. And these are valuable things. So there's a framework created in this project around green spaces, services, identity, and walkability that all support to the memory friendliness of a space. So this is the research part of the thesis. And then we went and looked at this plaza in Tampere. It's like a park that has a marketplace. And she did this analysis on how it could be developed with minor overlays to make it more memory friendly. And there are elements listed here: entrances and landmark structures, connecting market square with the streetscape, increased clarity in zoning of different functions. So clarity and wayfinding are huge. So what starts to happen with memory decline is that you don't remember things and things get confused, okay? So clarity, and identity, sort of clarity, making it clear for people to not go somewhere and suddenly go like, I don't know where I am. I don't know what's going on here. The noise is too much, etc., etc. These are the things that we try to diminish, lessen in our environments. We had a student, this is inevitable when we talk about memory decline. What about the IT? Surely we have an app for this, and why don't we have the robot solve all your problems? Now, make no mistake, I am not opposed to information technology at all, but there are significant problems with using it. The first problem is that people who have memory decline or dementia, their cognitive skills have declined. And normally, in order for you to use effectively information technology, you need good cognitive skills. So it's a bit of a mismatch to start with. And the second issue is the ethical issue of these devices and programs and apps. They actually collect information about the users, and this information is frequently being sold. And this is sold for profit, sold for development purposes, for whatever. And that is a very disturbing area that is definitely needing much more scrutiny. Anyways, this student did a outdoor route in an area of Helsinki where a person could go on their own to go and wander. And there were these little beacons in the landscape that were like electronic landmarks where you could scan something or it would beep and say, hi, you're now at Prospect Point or something like that. And then it would put you on the map and see where you are. So it's sort of not a very, very complicated idea, but an effort to show a sort of benign application, a helpful application of what's done. So what could be done in a smart city context? Finland is big on information technology. Nokia is from Finland. So how do exterior environments support well-being? What characteristics of outdoors are needed for people with memory decline? That's a weird question. Of course, you need outdoor environment for anyone. But we didn't really limit, like this is their choice of questions. And then how to create safe and supported outdoors environments. Now this, of course, has to be paired with understanding that in Finland it's dark half of the year and it's snowy and slippery. So these are all safety issues that need to be understood in addition to this. So participation in social activities and being outdoors can lessen the advancement of memory decline. So you can slow down the advancement, which is huge. It's huge. And I will challenge people here, anybody, to tell me where fitness or exercise is not helpful, and there's not a lot of things that we can say. Obviously in rehab you can do it too much, but so providing opportunities for free movement and exercise safely is really a good thing. Neighborhood scale is suitable for building up memory-friendly exterior environments, so you do them in a reasonable radius of wherever you live. Of course, this part of Helsinki had an apartment building that was designated for people with memory decline, and then with the help of technology, people can enjoy the outdoors independently and safely. So that was the argument here. And then we had a service design thesis, which was quite challenging to do during COVID, but this was an inclusive design project of developing public spaces in one of our Helsinki city-owned social housing developments. And the project, I'm just looking for here, this slide is maybe the best one, is that she looked at basically what services need to be provided, and there were 3 categories, so purely residential services, then engagement or social activity services, and then support services such as fitness and rehab, and then how the spaces could provide for this. And the place of residence can do this, and they can be places of engagement and places of support. And of course, the best is when these come together, right? And then the sensory design thesis, which looked at acoustics. Now, I don't know if you know, but sensory design is huge, actually. We are sort of over-committed to designing for the eyes and seeing things, but we sense our environment with all our senses. And I personally think there's way more than 6 senses, or 5 senses, but the main ones we talk about generally in design. So hearing is important. So out of the senses, one sense goes first when you have memory decline. Does anybody know which one it is? Well, it's actually almost like a diagnosis that you check, and then you say, no, it's the smell. Yeah, the sense of smell can be an indicator of starting memory decline. Interestingly, hearing goes last. But it's interesting because many people have reduced hearing, but when I was designing hospices, we knew that the last sense to go is the sense of hearing. So we designed for what is the last sound you want to hear in your whole life, and that was quite wonderful. Anyway, so this is on what kind of acoustical environments should be designed for people with memory decline. And age-related hearing loss is part of this, but the memory decline also makes it difficult for us to process sensory stimuli. So the cognitive function is a little bit impaired. So again, we need some more clarity in our environment, also in our auditory environment. So what's the ideal acoustical environment, and how can acoustical design support well-being? So I'm not about thinking that buildings can only make us sick, or buildings can make our situation worse. Often I start a lecture saying that who here thinks that buildings can make us sick? Everybody lifts their hand. But then I say, who in here thinks that buildings can make us better? And then I don't get all the hands anymore. But I think that's where we should be. We know that the environment can hurt us, it can make us feel worse, and it can make us have a negative experience. But I believe and know that buildings can also make us better. So that's where we should be, which is, there's a word for it, salutogenesis, which is a fancy word for generating health. And I think buildings and the built environment has a role in it, and we should all be invested in this role. And that's what this third research question here is, how can acoustical design support well-being? How can it make us better? And she came up with 6 elements of acoustical environment. And this is mostly in Finnish, but I've translated it. So the acoustical environment obviously helps with orientation. You know, you can hear where the cars are and where whatever is. Safety, obviously alarms, and having familiar sounds around you also helps you. And restorativeness, restoration, you can really know that, you know, ocean waves and the shuffling of leaves in the trees. It's wonderful. You want to have a little nap and then you fall. So these are things that you learn about how the acoustical environment can affect you. If it doesn't do this, confusion ensues. And what happens if there is a poor acoustical environment? Who knows what happens with these people? If people with memory decline, what happens is they withdraw. Yeah, they just completely go in the corner. They can't hear. They don't know what's going on. They can't participate. So the automatic thing is that they withdraw, and we don't want that because that is not, it's counterproductive for your life, right, and for the health. So in this case, the student has created this design for incidental. It's the same building where they did the service design thesis that was coincidence purely, and here they show how acoustical treatment can increase the enjoyability and usability of the public spaces in this building. Make no mistake, acoustical issues also happen in outdoor environments, so we need to understand how to control urban noise in public environments outdoors. So, how are we doing when we think about providing for people with memory decline? How do we think about it? So are we delivering care, or are we providing circumstances for people to live their lives? Okay, I think you know the answer. Sorry, I put the pink here, and I've got the wrong slide here. Sorry, here we go. The pink is where we want to be. And check yourself how many times you're on the left-hand side. We're transporting these people. Why do we transport them? We could encourage them to move. We could make a walk to somewhere, to a bus stop or something, rather than having the handy dart right there. So there are a lot of little shifts that we could have in our minds to do a better job of serving this population. And it's not that anybody is doing things wrong on purpose. No, we just need information on how to do it better, right? And these little questions are things like, do we talk about patients? Why do we talk about patients? Why don't we talk about Mr. Johnson or personalities, that guy, you know, who always had the guitar with him? You know, they're people just like you and me. And memory decline comes and goes. Some people start having memory decline in their 40s, if you can believe it. Sometimes it is, unfortunately, drug and substance induced brain damage, but nevertheless, you get the same condition. And then for some people, it starts in their 60s, and then up from there, it becomes more and more prevalent. So I challenge us to go into the pink here and start to think about these people as totally functioning members of society who just have special needs, like all of us have at times. I have here with me a little brochure that we generated as part of this project. It has text on the front and the back, which has questions, and just some text about why we think that people with memory decline deserve a completely different approach by us and societies these days. And then in the center, it has some just simple design tricks and rules about how you can make your grannies or your uncles or your own home more resistant to the needs of memory decline. So I brought one here, and it's also available electronically. It's an accessible electronic copy. So I've sent it to Andrew, so you can all get that. And the text is here. There's a couple of things here that I wanted to highlight is that the diversity, we need to understand the concept of diversity on a societal level and understand that these people are fully functional, members of society, in many cases, huge assets to society. They may just have memory decline, which makes them a bit limited in some ways. Memory decline also goes back and forth. It's not a linear progression. So there may be great days and then some not so great days. So we want full integration. I do not support solutions where we take elderly people or seniors and put them into locked facilities that are at the outskirts of the city. That's not okay in my opinion. And I know sometimes there has been need to do that, but I would like to advocate the other solutions. So memory care is a specialty field. This is what I said. Nobody wants to do a bad job on purpose. It's that we're lacking information. So there's information in this lecture, there's information out there, and specialists need to be consulted when you do this because there's some easy gains. What I say here is that we don't need to have more money to get it right. We do the same things a little bit differently, and then it's better. And the collaboration is crucial, especially in places like the renovation projects where we have building codes that may sort of not allow certain things. But if we are in a renovation context, we should be able to adjust the rules, because if you have an existing building, you can't just blow out all the walls. So you need to find a way to get all the people, all the licensing people, the permitting people, the care providers, and the users and their families at the same table and say, here we are, let's make it work. So collaboration is crucial. And then what I love to talk about is the mindset change. How could we all shift our mindsets around memory decline, for example, in this case? That's my speech, and thank you for your attention, and I'm very happy to have a conversation with you. Thanks. Does anybody want to start, or? Okay, and the gentleman in the back, over to you. Yeah.
Okay. So I sort of want to pick up on something that you ended with that I've been thinking about the whole time, which is the collaboration piece. And
yes.
Something I'm really interested in on the research side is participatory methods. And I've had experiences working with participatory methods where people that I'm working with begin to lose their memory. And so they have had to ultimately move on from the project, which is very sad. And it's brought up a lot of questions for me about how to do participatory methods with people who have memory decline.
Yeah.
So I'm also interested in them as a constituency in the city and how to plan for their needs. And I'm curious if you could share a bit more about your experiences of doing, whether it's co-design or collaborative planning or anything like that, with people with memory decline together or in groups with other people who don't have memory decline. Right. And any sort of guidance or lessons you've learned about how to support their inclusion in these types of participatory design or research processes.
That's a really great question. Thank you for asking it. Maybe I can answer by saying what we should not be doing. And we should not be doing is having generally the healthcare staff talk on behalf of the users of the service. And I really don't want to diss healthcare staff. Healthcare staff are heroes. But I have seen too many participatory or inclusive design panels, and I've sat in rooms with 60 people, and there is not one person representing the recipients of care. And it could be a patient representative or a family representative. So that's not okay. So the question is welcomed in this context, because I've seen too many. So it is difficult to do this. So I have a couple of things that may be helpful. There is a really great system of training people to represent a certain group, and we call them subject matter experts. So there are subject matter experts who are also in the field of memory decline. Some of them are themselves. I just attended the World Alzheimer's Conference in Helsinki. It had over 1,000 people, and it started with this beautiful panel of Alzheimer's patients speaking at the front of the room, solid, great presentation, and they said, do not exclude us when you talk about us. We are here and we function. And it was so powerful. So yes, bring them in as much as you can. They're subject matter experts, and we have also used subject matter experts who are family members of people affected, which has been a useful and a helpful situation. But I do want to stress that subject matter experts need to be trained. There is a training that you can go through to become a subject matter expert in order to maybe the best advocate would be the right answer. It's difficult. I don't deny that. Yeah. But some people with memory decline, they're functional for 8 or 10 years until completely it becomes difficult. So it is hard. And I think if you want to include people who experience these conditions, include a couple too many. So then if you lose 1 or 2, you're still having a reasonable representation. You still have a voice at the table. So that would be the other one. And I also, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say that was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Very helpful, and thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks. Yeah, so have more than you need is one, so that then if you lose 1 or 2, you still have representation. Yeah, there was something else I was going to say, but that, I hope that's helpful. Yeah, and please, they have to be paid. Yeah, it just drives me crazy. Everybody around the table are highly paid specialists, and then comes somebody, panting from home, just put the kids to daycare and sits there and nobody gives them more than a cup of coffee. So everybody needs to get, if it's a professional context where everybody gets paid, you have to have an honoraria for the user representatives. Yeah, yeah. Great question. Over to you.
Thank you. Yes, very convincing illustration of I think the need for a much more holistic and health-centered approach. I'm very much convinced by everything, and I think that really like the idea of like samudogenesis.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect grounding for this, and that can work for planning and urban design just as much as architecture. And so my question, and I apologize for coming late, and I didn't know how you set this all up and whether you talked about kind of a specific context. But right away I think, well, what might be the barriers for this being implemented more wholesale,
right,
or becoming a bit more mainstream, or just part of how we deliver housing in general?
Yeah, that's a big question. So I think there are a couple of barriers in general that we just need to be aware of. And one is that we're super pigeonholed in general. In healthcare especially, you know more and more about less and less. And then you just do one thing, and then the one thing doesn't really tie into everything else around it. So that's one thing. So I hope that lectures like this, and I've spoken a lot about this topic, and I teach in Finland. Now I've had like a small generation of architects who've come through my training or my classes, and they know about this now. And they will go out there and they've been nicely employed in offices that work with healthcare, and they will have this sensibility. So education is key. Like, it's not that people are doing bad stuff on purpose, but there are people who misrepresent themselves and say, yeah, I do healthcare, I know how to do this. And you need to really take that with a grain of salt and look at what they really have done and how it's been done and how it's worked, because they might look good on the magazine, but does it really work nicely is another issue. So I have seen a little bit of that, sort of that overconfidence. And there is no substitute for experience. And that's why I said you need experience. It's a specialty field. And talk to people who do this work. There's more and more of us as we go. But I think planners are actually in a great position to assist with this, because planners always think holistically. We are at fault as architects because we think of like one building at a time many times. So we just need to come together and have these conversations. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to just one follow-up is that, like, in everything you showed, the quality is higher than the typical. And with higher quality comes kind of higher costs, and especially, I suppose, in the climate of kind of housing crises and so forth, is that often kind of something that you come up against, that, oh yes, this is in ideal world fantastic, but we can't afford it. Let's go to the lesser version of this?
Well, the answer is no. Finland does not have a housing crisis. We have too much housing. We have about 2,000 people in the whole of Finland, of 5.5 million people who don't have a home or a rental agreement. And many of these are homeless by choice because they're like riding their bike around Europe or something. So we don't have that problem. And as I said, I mean, I argue this quite powerfully because that's sort of a defeatist question, if I may say that yeah, it's not going to work because it's too much money. No, it can be done with the same money that you would do a typical apartment or a typical park. Just put those goggles on, the memory-informed goggles, and do it right when you plan it. It doesn't need to cost more. So that I would sort of challenge that. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, maybe on more of a personal note, does like doing this work and being involved in this work make you like more hopeful towards the future? Like do you view like aging and memory loss as something more of like an additional step to life rather than something to be like feared and dreaded?
Yeah.
There's a lot of like northern identities around like Alzheimer's and memory loss. It's just a lot of like dread and fear. And does this like you feel different about that now after having worked around this?
Right, I love your question, thank you. I'm a total optimist, and I think that, you know, we can make the world so much better than it is, and we're here because we all meant to be here, and we're at, you know, SCARP, and I'm at Aalto, and everybody who comes to this work is meant to be here. And we're here because we want to make the world better, and we can. And these are the things what we can talk about together and study together to know how we can do it. So yeah, I totally feel optimistic, and I do believe that Alzheimer's and memory decline are an equally acceptable, if you want, sorry, like a helpless part of life as infanthood, you know? We are celebrating babies who are just learning to walk, and then at the other end, we're sort of a bit impatient with people who are losing the ability to walk or to make a cake or play cards or whatever. And yeah, we need to just shift our thinking on that. And there's so many beautiful things that happen in Alzheimer's context. Like I visited an Alzheimer's farm in the Netherlands, and it's run by these two completely amazing women. And there's like horses and dogs and ducks and whatever all around, and the people are there, and some of them are nonverbal, okay? And there's this beauty when you see two nonverbal Alzheimer's people communicating, and they communicate, and it's just amazing. And there's a beauty to seeing an Alzheimer's group participate in choir singing, choral singing or something, when the music comes and everybody recognizes the tune, but they no longer even have the words, and it somehow just brings life to them. This is beautiful. It's like the beauty of life, totally like magnified in those moments. I hope you've all seen that viral YouTube video of this South American prima ballerina. Have you seen it? I can't talk about it without crying. Okay, so there's this prima ballerina who's about 100 years old, and she's sort of like this, you know, the body is already a little bit like this, and in a care home somewhere, I think it was in South America. And she has this carer from heaven, this male nurse who comes to her, and they all know. She used to be the prima ballerina at Ballet XYZ somewhere. And they put on the Swan Lake. And this woman is like, it's just a shadow of a body almost at that point. And the music brings her alive in this way that is just unbelievably just beautiful. And she dances in this chair a little bit like this, and and then she puts the hands like Odette and Odile in you know, Swan Lake. They do. It is just beauty, beauty, beauty. And like 2 months after the video, she died.
It's less of a question, more of a comment. I thought it was really interesting to learn about the lived experiences and how to integrate that into the ways that we've had.
Yeah.
And I feel like every time, you know, I attend one of these talks or maybe listen to some students who have different backgrounds and different experiences, the more you learn about that, the more you are actually able to create more inclusive spaces. And
Yeah.
like you were saying, like, there's something that you can take out of this. I feel like I took this out.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I do want to take a moment of your time still for pure self-promotion, in that I am hosting a conference in Finland in June about the effects of design on health and well-being. And we already have people from over 20 countries registered. So if you're interested, you can look at this, but it's not online. So you need to hop on the plane and come to Finland, which is beautiful in June, I will tell you. It's in June 17th to 19th of June, just before midsummer, so long nights in Finland. You're very welcome to come. And there will be other people coming from Vancouver as well. So, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And as a thanks for Professor Andrew, I have also a book from my university on our university architecture studies just celebrated 150-year anniversary, so we made a little book.
Very cool.
So yeah, it just shows some of the work that's done. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to meet you and share with you today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it cookie time?
It might be.
Yeah.